Oh, sorry. I am eating. I found some nerds from a training the other day that I took. So I'm partaking in some cannibalism. There you go. I know what I am. Okay, so we get to talk about animals. If you're getting into the arthropod things, there are a ton of insects. This is why, for me, as an entomologist, it's job security. Because they're all over the place. Different shapes, sizes, habitats, mating habits, diets, everything else. We're more than 1 million species, and nearly 3/4 of all animal species. Insects are exemplar for animal diversity. So whoever chooses insects or get chosen insects for arthropods, it's so diverse, but there's so many cool things to talk about. Okay, so many cool ones. All right. Oh, they're so fun. Okay, big ideas. We'll talk about animal diversity. Now, we're just going to spend our time here. This one is up online for you, so that way if you have an invertebrate that you've chosen, like I know lots of people have chosen echinoderms and cnidarians, so plus anything else other than that that's in that kind of invertebrate category, you can find some information there to get started. You can also check out your book because all of these things go hand in hand with your book. Okay? So animal evolution and diversity. Let's start with an essential question here. Let's start off with the easiest essential question you can think of. What are animals? Yay! I'm doing slightly better because I found a stylus. So I could doing it with my finger. Improvements. That's what happened. I shouldn't have candy before I do a lecture video anymore. Alright, so what is an animal? So animals are eukaryotes. Remember what that means? It means contains or has a nucleus. Okay, so all the cells in our body are going to contain a nucleus. We're also multicellular. Obviously, we're not just one cell, we're made of many. We're heterotrophs, which means we get different nourishment. Hopefully, we've talked about that. Troph means nourishment, so this is different nourishment. We get them from different places. And all of our cells lack cell walls. Okay? Animals also use ingestion, which means we eat food. Okay? We have to take it in like I just did with those nerds. Okay? Fungi absorb their nutrients after digesting food outside of their body, so we're different in the fact that eating the food and digesting and absorbing nutrients happens within the body. Like with this snake and this, I think it's an antelope. So all of that is going to get digested inside of the snake body. Yay! All right. Most adult animals are diploid or diploid and reproduce sexually. Okay. And that is part of what you'll have to talk about in yours is the reproductive strategy asexual or sexual reproduction. Eggs and sperm are usually there. Uh, Egg and sperm or gametes. Gametes are produced by meiosis. Hopefully that's not new information for you. They are the only oh Lord. Eggs and sperm are the only haploid cells that you find in an animal body, and they fuse during fertilization to form a zygote. So hopefully that's not new. What is new is that the zygote divides by mitosis to form a hollow ball of cells called a blastula. Okay, so it's a ball of cells. Okay, we won't look at that one. One side of the blastula will actually fold in and become rearranged to form a gastrula, which establishes three embryonic layers. So you can mention these because you'll see these how they work, but there's an endoderm, which is just the future lining of the digestion tract. So that's derm usually is lining, so this is the inside lining. Ecto means outside, so this is the outside lining. Okay, it'll give rise to the skin and the nervous system outside. And meso means middle, so this is kind of like the middle layer. that gives rise to muscles and internal organs. Which you'll be kind of looking for, what types of things and tissues do you see in your animal? Okay, so what happens? Adults, they undergo meiosis to form egg and sperm. There's fusion to form a zygote. The zygote undergoes mitosis to form a hollow, hollow ball of cells called a blastula. At some point, there will be a gastrula, which will actually kind of either produce the mouth or the anus, and we're going to talk about that one in a minute too. Then there's larva, and it'll eventually become an adult. All right. So you can take a look at some of your animals. There's a gastrula stage, and many animals develop directly into adults. Some animals, like the sea star, develop into one or more larval stages, which are just kind of like, I don't know, juvenile stages. They're like, I don't know, like kids. Okay? Sort of. Okay, so a larva is an immature individual that looks different from the adult animal. Okay, it looks different. That's why the caterpillar is a larva, the butterfly is the adult. A larva undergoes a major change that's called metamorphosis. So it's a process of changing the form. And it becomes a reproductively mature adult. Clusters of master control homeotic genes control this transformation. So those are those, remember those blueprint genes that we talked about vaguely a little bit? They help that happen. So the lineage that gave rise to animals is thought to have diverged from a flagellated unicont. Remember, that's a protist. About a billion years ago. And the oldest generally accepted animal fossils that have been found are, over half a billion years old. Okay, animal diversification appears to have accelerated rapidly from 535 to 525 million years ago during the Cambrian period, so that's our Cambrian explosion. I won't really ask you too much about that, but it is kind of worth knowing. The most celebrated source of Cambrian fossils is from the Burgess Shale, which is kind of this cornucopia of perfectly preserved animal fossils. And they look like this. These things are just gorgeous. Look how wonderfully imprinted they are. And I don't know anything about those two, but they are beautiful. These are some really cool animals that we get from a long time ago. Hallucigenia is probably one of my favorites because that's what that guy looked like in the fossil record, but scientists have been trying to figure out for years whether this part, the bottom part, is actually the top or whether this is the top. They can't figure out how this animal actually moved around and what it did. So they've been trying to figure out, like, what is the top? It's simple things that we don't think about. So the Cambrian explosion may have been caused by increasingly complex predator-prey relationships and atmospheric oxygen. So all these things kind of lead to the Cambrian explosion. So much of the diversity in body form along with animal phyla is associated with variations where and when homeotic genes are expressed within developing embryos. So that's how we're beginning to get some of this diversity. Okay, of the 35 or so animal phyla, only one phylum includes vertebrates, and that would be it's called Chordata. This is why we do kind of a weird grouping of things because we cover some of the invertebrates, but also kind of a variety of the chordates as well. Okay, about 96% of animals are invertebrates, and that means they lack a backbone. Okay, so that's kind of a good place to pause. That's kind of an introduction to the history of animals, but there are some really important things. So pause the video and then do come back. Okay, so some of the things that you're going to have to talk about in your own presentation for your animal are these things. And this would be under the body plan section. And you can figure out how to make it work, but you'll want to talk about symmetry, which will give you some examples of that. Which one does yours fall under? Presence of true tissues. Are they true tissues or are they just kind of cellular layers? If there's any embryonic layers and how many there are, presidents, I'll get it together. Presence of a body cavity. Okay, and we'll talk about that. It has a special name. And then details of their embryonic development. Maybe not quite this one so much, but at least you'll get an idea of where to go from here on out. So, there are a couple of types of symmetry that you'll be looking for. There'll either be radial, bilateral, or no symmetry. Okay, and we'll be able to look at kind of those types of patterns as we talk about it later. So radially symmetrical will be here, and then there's bilateral symmetry. Bi means two. Lateral actually refers to sides, so this is two-sided symmetry. Okay. Radial is just in a radius. It's like a pizza. Every way that you cut it, you're still going to get two equal sides. So that's radial symmetry. Embryonic development, two or more layers, is will we end up getting a mesoderm formed in there, or will it only be two layers? Body cavity is kind of, is there a body cavity? And there's going to be some intermediate grounds. There's going to be kind of a no, a yes, and a kind of, okay, which we lovingly refer to as a pseudocoelom. So we'll get there. Okay. So first we have types of symmetry. Like I said, there's kind of the pizza pie way where no matter how you cut it, you're going to get equal sides. So that's our radial symmetry. And then bilateral is bi for two, lateral means side. So this is a two-sided symmetry. We fall under the bilateral symmetry. The next is embryonic development of tissue layers. So there's actually some really fun stuff with this. So what happens with gastrulation is that it's a kind of a ball of cells, and at some point it kind of gets an indentation, like pokes in on one end. And that will form eventually the digestive tract. So there are actually two ways to do this. Actually, it's the more primitive version, but if that opening becomes the mouth, protostome is what we call it. You'll also want to tell if your animal is protostome or deuterostome. But protostome means that the mouth develops first. If it's deuterostome, that means that the anus develops first. So it develops butt first. Okay. So there's a really fun joke about this one because humans fall into this category. Humans are deuterostomes. So there is a joke that says, at some point in your life, you were nothing but a butthole. It's kind of true. And you and I could probably both think of some people that maybe haven't left the deuterostome kind of gastrulation stage. If you catch my drift on that one. All right, so embryonic development of the body cavity. There's a covering, and we've got a body cavity. So if the cavity exists on the inside, it's part of a pattern that we'll talk about. So those are, and that's also something you'll want to look for is, does it have a body cavity? Is it a true body cavity? So it's going to, like I said, it'll be yes, sort of, and no. So you're going to try to figure out which one you have as far as a body cavity. Okay. So biologists make hypotheses about the phylogeny of animal groups using evidence from body plan, which is why you're listing it, the fossil record, in case you get some information there, and most recently molecular data, so chiefly DNA sequences. Okay. That you don't have to cover so much. One phylogenetic tree recently revised to reflect new information between sponges, without true tissues, and eumatozoans, which is animals with true tissues. Animals with two tissue layers and radially symmetrical, and animals with three tissue layers and bilaterally symmetrical are the bilaterians. So there's kind of a distinction there. We have a distinction between protostomes and deuterostomes, and ecdysozoans and lophotrochozoans. Yeah, get that. These you don't have to know, but there's a little part of me that like to hear you try to say them. I really won't ask you those though. Okay, so remember how we do our kind of trees? This one's a little bit different. This one just says we have a protist back in the day. At some point, sponges kind of broke off and they had their own tissue. As we move this way, everybody else in this graph or this chart, this cladogram, is going to have true tissues. Okay, and then we have the Cnidarians break off, bilaterians, they'll have bilateral symmetry, and that's what everybody else here has. And then we'll kind of break off in these different categories as we go along, and we'll talk about some of those guys as we move forward. Okay, so that gives you an idea of where to start with body plan, and that's honestly all I have for you. Because I want you to start there trying to get through an idea of what the body plan is. I also want you to get an idea of what animal it is. So, like I said, a little reminder, if you haven't chosen already, choose an animal and send me an email, or the next class period just kind of be prepared to get one because we want to start researching some of these things already. But at least you have an idea of part of the body plan background. And in our next lecture, we'll cover more of the body systems so you get an idea of what other things that you're going to be researching. So with that, we're good. If you have any questions or want to choose your animal, send me an email.